Thank you, Sir Christopher, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Delyn on securing this debate, which has certainly triggered a wide-ranging discussion on the topic of Welsh devolution. Now, Mr Chairman, as we've heard throughout this debate, devolution in Wales has evolved considerably since the incredibly close referendum in 1997, when I was still in school and quite possibly my honourable friend was also. And successive UK governments have devolved further powers to Cardiff Bay in an attempt to place the devolution settlement on a firmer footing and put more responsibility and accountability at its heart. This has included providing powers to make primary legislation in devolved areas, powers to introduce replacements for stamp duty, land tax and landfill tax in Wales, the introduction of a new Welsh rate of income tax, and powers for Welsh ministers to borrow to fund capital expenditure. Nowadays, the devolution settlement is based on a reserved powers model in line with that in place in Scotland. The devolved administration also has greater powers to manage its own affairs, as well as over matters relating to elections, transport and natural resources. There's been a great deal of debate this morning about the future of Welsh devolution and whether the current boundary between devolved and reserved powers is right. And it's clear that very different views exist, and we must acknowledge that these are reflected among the people of Wales. And if I turn to some of the comments that have been made this morning, the Honourable Member for Delyn, of course, focused on disappointing policy outcomes in Wales with reference to Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board, education, transport and so on. He also talked of the north-south divide within Wales and the disengagement, sadly, that we see in politics with turnout in devolved elections at just under 47% at the last elections, which I think compares to 67% at the general election. We also had an intervention from the Honourable Member from Strangford, who talked of his desire to see local representation wherever possible, and obviously more positive comments from the Honourable Members from representing Gordon, Llanelli, Merthyr Tydfil and Rumney, and the Honourable Member for Llanelli talked about the importance of accessibility of ministers at all levels of government and cooperation too. Now, I'm firmly of the opinion that the overwhelming priority of the people of Wales relates not to an incessant one-way transfer of powers down the M4, nor to taking us down a route towards more separatism, but to deliver on the important matters of the day, such as health, the cost of living and education. We sadly continue to see poor levels of interest and awareness of the roles of our various and different layers of government, and therefore often limited democratic accountability. And I think it's important in the context of Wales in particular to remember that 50% of the population of Wales lives within 25 miles of the border with England, which does influence how many people view the devolved settlement. Bringing decision-making on devolved issues closer to people affected by them is one of the real opportunities of the devolution agenda. But it would be remiss of me, as we reflect on the last 25 years of devolution in Wales, not to acknowledge that there are legitimate concerns among many in Wales over devolution and the direction of travel that's being taken in Cardiff Bay. All too often, Mr Chairman, we've seen attempts to centralise decision-making within the Welsh Government, something which goes against the concept of true devolution. So contrary to some of the arguments that have been made today, it's been particularly pleasing to me to see this government deliver on its promises to see true devolution in the allocation of shared prosperity funding. And that's something I've seen firsthand in Denbighshire, my own county, as a member of the county's SPF partnership group. And it does allow new and refreshing approaches to local problems and opportunities driven by local people. I will.
Well, grateful for the Minister for giving way, and he makes a very, very good point. In line with what my old friend from Strangford mentioned earlier on about that local decision-making. Back about 2 years ago from now, the First Minister appeared in front of the Welsh Affairs Select Committee, and I remember asking him very specifically on the subject of devolution, whether he was going to devolve more powers to the regions, to North Wales specifically, because he'd previously said that he thought that that was a good idea. So I asked him when those powers were going to come and what powers they were going to be. And as yet, none have materialised, and I think the First Minister was a little bit indignant at the question. So I wonder, does the Minister agree with me that the current situation of devolution isn't working, and a potential solution might be to give more autonomy to North Wales to actually make some decisions for itself?
Well, I thank the Honourable Member for that point. I think he makes a strong argument. In fact, in response to the roads review recently, he'll be aware that one of the Labour members in the Senedd has called for greater powers, autonomy for North Wales. And in fact, a representative of the business community in North Wales today has called for a directly elected mayor for North Wales. So it comes back to my point that devolution should be true in nature, and it should be led by local people, local representatives, which isn't always the case at present. Now, Mr. Chairman, under the Welsh Labour government, we're seeing the economy of Wales growing at a slower rate than the rest of the UK. And in terms of education, Wales is sadly at the bottom of the PISA rankings compared to other parts of the UK. And in the health service, we see abysmal performance and outcomes data. We also see what I would regard as very detrimental policies on road building and tourism. And all of this is despite the UK government providing record levels of funding to the Welsh government and more per head of the population than in England, as we have heard. The UK government has a duty of care towards all British citizens, and it's important that UK-wide comparable data is used to justify and learn from different policy approaches across the country. The days of devolve and forget have to be over. I'm deeply concerned that despite the challenges that face the Welsh economy and failing devolved public services in Wales, the Welsh Government's unrelenting focus is often on constitutional matters, including increasing the number of politicians in Cardiff Bay and changing its voting system. Some have suggested this would be at a cost of £100 million over 5 years. Mr. Chairman, devolution in Wales means that Wales has two governments. Both should be fully focused on the issues that really matter: levelling up our economy, creating jobs and supporting people with the cost of living. The UK government's investment towards these priorities through initiatives such as the Levelling Up Fund and our support with energy costs highlights the benefits that Wales enjoys from being part of the United Kingdom. And I want to emphasise something which is not always said, namely for those of us very clearly in the majority in Wales who believe in the United Kingdom and are proud to be part of it, this place, Parliament, will always have a critical role in delivering for Wales and its people. Our approach to devolution is underpinned by our commitment to work collaboratively with the Welsh Government and all the devolved administrations. The landmark agreement... Yes.
Thank you, Sir Christopher. Just on the point of collaboration with the Welsh Government, does the Minister think it's unacceptable the way that the UK Government has clawed back funding from the Welsh Government? I think my understanding is that issues around switching between revenue and capital have been agreed many times before. The level of underspend is significantly below some other UK departments. So does he think that was a pretty poor show by the UK Government? Would you agree?
Well, I think he puts that in an interesting way. I think the other side of the story is that all of those entrusted with the spending of public money should do so carefully and should make efforts to comply with the rules and the arrangements around that money. So I think the other way of looking at that is that actually the Welsh Government had failed in terms of its duty to wisely spend the money that was available to it. But moving on from that, the landmark agreement reached last year between the UK and devolved government strengthens our intergovernmental structures further. The new structures provide a firm foundation to deepen our partnership working. And our joint work on city and growth deals in Wales, as well as our announcement last week that we will establish 2 free ports in Wales following agreement with the Welsh Government, exemplifies our approach to collaboration. Mr Chairman, over the past 25 years we've seen dramatic changes in the way in which Wales is governed. It's clear that a wide range of views exists over how this might change in the future, but I would urge all to focus not on the constitutional debate, but on delivering on the real priorities for the people of Wales. Thank you.